Governor General Mary Simon there responding to questions about what happened in the House of Commons as Ukraine's president paid a visit. The Governor General had met with Vladimir Zelensky that morning before he addressed Parliament, but it's what happened next that continues to make waves. Right after President Zelensky spoke, the Speaker of the House of Commons recognized a World War II veteran in the gallery who it turns out was a Nazi. Anthony Rota stepped down as Speaker after apologizing for the invite, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issued an apology yesterday on behalf of all MPs. Is it enough to blunt the damage? Let's bring in the front bench to talk about that. Former Toronto Mayor John Tory is here. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair is with us, as is CTV National News Ottawa correspondent Judy Trin. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. Tom, I'll start with you. I mean, my first kind of indication that perhaps the political climate is dissipating a little bit was that the Conservatives did not lead in question period with this. They've moved on now to back to, I guess I should say, economic issues. Do you think that the Prime Minister's apology yesterday, for the most part, kind of diverted things?
I think that that's perfectly well said, Vashi, for the most part, because there's still something that lingers for all Canadians. We feel very badly about it. We realize that we had somebody incredibly important on the world stage that we're quite close to. We've been helping all we can. And they had a perfect day, even great weather. The Churchillian speech by Zelensky couldn't have gone better, the whole thing. And then, boom, we find out about this incredible boneheaded move by Speaker Rota, who's done the right thing and stepped down. Parenthesis, by the way, I always feel I have to add, he was a very good speaker. Were it not for this, he would have been very fondly remembered. But unfortunately for him, he's going to be remembered for this. Has Mr. Trudeau managed to put a lid on this? Well, it's not the type of thing, I believe, Vashi, that you can just turn the page on. So it's going to linger. People are going to continue asking questions. There will be a committee. They'll try to find out whether it was true. I have absolutely no doubt that this was the initiative of Mr. Rota. But it stays there for Canadians. You know, we've got a really good reputation on the world stage. And I've been talking to media types in other countries, in Europe especially, and they don't know who Anthony Rota is. They know Justin Trudeau, and they know Canada. They like us. They like our values. And it's like, sorry, what happened? Everybody applauded a Nazi in your parliament. So it's been tough, and it's going to be eventually, it's going to diminish, but it'll remain a stain for quite a while, I believe. But Trudeau himself will not carry it the way the Conservatives had hoped to make him carry it.
John, do you think it does deserve some further study? I know there has been kind of a partisan back and forth, but I do think stepping back, just like Tom says, a lot of Canadians are aghast that something like this could actually take place. I understand there are rules and regulations about the way Parliament works, but I do still think it is confusing to a lot of people, and maybe they would like a full explanation.
Oh, I don't have any doubt about that. I mean, it was a serious shambles of a situation. It was an embarrassment, to say the very least. And I think, we all are owed some explanation. I don't think the way to handle it is the way it was going, where, the leader of the opposition was trying to sort of pin it all on the Prime Minister, when in fact, and the Prime Minister did, in fact, they were saying, well, who was the apology given on behalf of? He's the Prime Minister of Canada. So he gave the apology on behalf of Canadians and on behalf of his government. And he said he was speaking for all the MPs, who I think, without exception, got up and applauded, albeit in very misleading circumstances. But I think now we owe it to ourselves as a country to look into how this happened, to look into better ways to, ensure that people don't get that close to the Parliament or get recognized in Parliament that way. But also questions like, how did some of these people get into the country? I know we've had a commission back in the 80s. There's a lot of that commission that was never made public. And here we were turning away Jewish refugees to the country when we were admitting people like this who've lived among us now for decades. And I think we should look at some of those kinds of things. I think that if I was the opposition leader, I would have been asking, well, what have you done to reach out to the Jewish community, to the Ukrainian community, to the president of Ukraine? Have you spoken, with him to ensure he understands that this was a very shameful thing that happened? I guess you'll call it inadvertently. So those are the things that I think people will want to see, just to make sure it doesn't happen again, and to make sure maybe we come face to face with some things that have happened in our own history that we need to confront.
It's interesting on the point that John raises, Judy, about whether or not there have been any, overtures specifically to President Zelensky, because I think the greater context is important here, right? Part of the justification Russia has used for this war is, quote unquote, the denazification of Ukraine, right? So the image of President Zelensky standing up to applaud a Nazi has already been utilized in Russian propaganda. The Prime Minister was asked by the Bloc Québécois if he had. I asked Minister Gould last night multiple times. There was no yes in response, right? Diplomatic channels are open, certainly. I also asked the Governor General today if she has had a state, not assuming culpability in any way, but just thought she would make an overture, or she had intended to, or would, and she said she was considering that. I think the questions that John raises also about how this goes forward are really important, and you've been up on the Hill asking ministers about that.
I was so glad to hear that you were interviewing the Governor General today, on reconciliation. But, when we talk about reconciliating our dark past, this is a lesson that we need to learn. This is insight that she can provide. She said that she was considering it. After you came back with the interview, I was in touch with the PMO. I said, has there been any changes? Has the Prime Minister reached out personally? They wouldn't say. They said it stands diplomatic back channels. We know that Foreign Minister Melanie Joly reached out to her counterpart. But I think what is important here is to note that there is also personal fallout, right? So this 98-year-old man, he was living a life in which there was, in many ways, it was an open secret. He didn't try to hide it. I mean, in terms of the research for the story today, it turns out that the Ukraine-Canadian Congress recognized a group of Ukrainian veterans with the SS Galicia in 2007, honored them with medals. He was on that list. He has participated in Ukraine rallies here in Canada to show his support for what was going on overseas for President Zelensky. And I think one of the things that has been missing in this are the voices of Ukrainian Canadians. They have been very hesitant to talk. They have been. There was a statement today released by the Ukrainian Canadian Congress that said that recognizing that the pain of the past, but they have not made any on-camera statements. And I visited a refugee welcome center. So since the Ukraine war began, Vashi, more than 170,000 Ukrainians have been welcomed into Canada. There is this concern that this issue will lessen support at a time when they need it here, as well as support overseas for the war effort.
Yeah, I mean, what that underscores is kind of what John was alluding to. We have a very uncomfortable history here, which has been illuminated through what we all witnessed over the past number of days, with the fact that we did welcome Nazis to this country and they were able to immigrate here. And the ask is that the government unseals some of those records, but obviously there are complicated consequences to that too. Okay, I have to take a commercial break. The front bench is sticking around. We're going to weigh in next on Danielle Smith's fight with Ottawa over energy regulations. Kelly Kreiderman will join us. Judy Trin, thanks so much for your input here. We're back in just a moment with the front bench.